Empires don't fall from external pressures. Every historian understands this, and every strategist who has studied the collapse of Rome, the British Empire, or the dissolution of the Soviet Union knows it too. Empires collapse from within. They fall when the provinces no longer listen to the capital, when governors stop obeying the emperor, and when the people who run the economy, the ones who keep the lights on, the factories running, and the trucks moving, look at the person on the throne and say, "You're killing us, and we're done asking for permission to survive." This has just happened. Not in a history book or a documentary, but right now, today. Earlier this morning, while you were pouring your coffee, at 9:08 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 American governors sat across from Canada's Prime Minister at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel in Toronto. This wasn't a secretive meeting. They held a press conference with flags, microphones, prepared statements, printed agendas, legal teams, and trade representatives. 10 sitting governors from U.S. states just signed a direct economic cooperation agreement with Mark Carney, without the approval of the White House, without the State Department's consent, and without any phone call to the Oval Office. These states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Washington, California, and Maine, represent a combined GDP of $8.9 trillion and a population of 122 million people. That's more economic output than Germany, Japan, or the United Kingdom. These states are the backbone of America. They build the cars, grow the food, power the grid, and drive the technology sector. These states decide presidential elections. Their factories depend on Canadian parts. Their refineries depend on Canadian oil. Their power grids rely on Canadian electricity, and their farmers depend on Canadian rail to move grain. Yet, every one of these states just looked at President Trump and said, "You're destroying our economies. You won't listen, so we're going around you." The agreement they signed is called the Great Lakes Pacific Economic Continuity Accord. It's not a treaty, since governors can't sign treaties, but it's a binding economic cooperation agreement that commits these 10 states to maintain uninterrupted trade with Canada, regardless of federal tariffs. The agreement covers shared supply chains, mutual emergency energy provisions, cross-border workforce mobility, and a joint dispute resolution mechanism that bypasses federal courts entirely. In simpler terms, 10 American states just built a trade wall, not with Canada, but around the White House. They are telling Trump, impose whatever tariffs you want, demand whatever you want, scream whatever insults you want. We will keep trading with Canada because our people's jobs depend on it. Our economies depend on it. Our survival depends on it. The White House is calling it treason, legal experts are calling it unprecedented, and historians are calling it the most significant challenge to federal authority since the 1832 nullification crisis. But to Mark Carney, this is just another day's work. When Trump was busy standing at podiums demanding trillions in tariffs and insulting Canada, Carney was on the phone. Not with the White House, but with governors, mayors, CEOs, and union leaders whose workers cross the border every day. He bypassed Washington because Washington had become the obstacle. He went directly to the people who actually run the economy and offered them what Trump never could: a plan, a framework, a spreadsheet showing them exactly how many jobs they'd lose, how many factories would close, and how much state budgets would shrink if the border hardened. Then he gave them an alternative. Keep trading with us. We'll build the legal architecture, provide dispute resolution, and guarantee supply chains. Your factories stay open, your people keep their jobs, and your state revenue holds. And 10 governors, 6 Republicans, decided that protecting their people mattered more than protecting Trump's ego. Donald Trump just lost control of his own country. Not to Democrats, not to the media, and not to a foreign adversary, but to reality. To the cold, hard math that shows the American economy cannot function without Canada. And no amount of presidential shouting can change the laws of supply and demand. Let's dig into the details. The Great Lakes Pacific Economic Continuity Accord is not just a symbolic gesture. It's an operational framework with legal and economic structures. First, Canada has committed to maintaining current export volumes of automotive components, steel, lumber, and agricultural products to these 10 states at pre-tariff pricing. If tariffs are imposed, the states and Canada will jointly fund a tariff absorption mechanism to neutralize the price increase. In practical terms, factories in Michigan will pay the same price for Canadian parts, regardless of Trump's tariffs. Second, Canada guarantees an uninterrupted electricity supply to these states at current rates for a minimum of 5 years. This ensures states like New York and Minnesota, which rely on Canadian hydroelectric power, will continue to receive energy even if the federal government tries to restrict energy imports. Third, the accord establishes a streamlined cross-border workforce credential recognition system, making it easier for workers from Canada and these states to move freely across the border. Finally, the accord includes a dispute resolution panel made up of state officials and Canadian trade representatives. Disputes between Canadian suppliers and American buyers in these states will be resolved by this panel, not by federal courts or the U.S. Trade Representative. This means that even if Trump imposes tariffs, these states will bypass the federal government's trade policy and continue their economic relationship with Canada. The governors found a legal loophole, and Carney's lawyers designed the framework to fit through it. The White House's legal team is now scrambling to find a way to stop it, but so far, no one's sure they can. The governors who signed the accord did so after intense pressure from their own state Republican parties. Calls came from party chairs, donors, and RNC officials. But in the end, the governors chose survival over loyalty to Trump. They ran the numbers and realized that defying Trump was the only way to protect their states from economic ruin. This move is sending shockwaves through Washington and the financial markets. When the accord was announced, U.S. auto stocks surged. Ford, GM, and Stellantis all saw big gains. Why? Because the accord guarantees their supply chains. The tariff threat that could have destroyed their production lines has been neutralized. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio state bonds rallied, and the dollar dropped. The bond market sees the accord as fiscal insurance, guaranteeing stable revenue streams and employment levels. Investors are betting on stability, and the Canadian dollar surged as a result. The real story is about math. Not ideology, not loyalty, not partisanship. Cold, hard math. The governors who signed the accord understood that without Canada, their economies would collapse. Trump's tariffs were about to destroy American industries, but these governors found a way to protect their people, and they did it by bypassing Trump's authority.